The mummy lives! Well, no, not really. Hi everybody, Beanmeister22 here, and as promised I was going to show you something else weird and unusual. The piece we are looking at today has possibly been shown in a previous video a long time ago in a galaxy far away, or on a YouTube channel far away. And it is a piece of mummy cloth. Mummy cloth? What the heck is that? Well, it's cloth that came off a mummy. Duh. So this is a genuine certified piece of cloth that came off a mummy, and I got it in a lot of both ancient and antique Egyptian items at an auction. Now, why do I say both antique and ancient? Ancient? Well, the ancient part of that lot I got at auction was well over thousands of years old, and many items actually came from a pyramid or various pyramids. Remember, there's a whole bunch of other weird tombs and pyramids that are small and not famous. It's not just those big giant famous ones. I have little statues, and there was this very nice looking old necklace, and then there was this little kind of piece of wood. It was a piece of a spindle, and it was used for spinning cotton or wool or whatever they spun with it. It was recovered from a tomb, and it had gnaw marks from rats chewing on it. So tomb rats chewed on that piece of wood. And yeah, there's a few other things. Now, the antique part of that lot were Egyptian souvenirs sold to tourists 100+ years ago, which really just makes them antiques, not ancient artifacts. Mid-century Victorian collectors had, and I'm finger quoting, Egyptomania. When they took their world tours and their travels, they loved the tourist souvenirs they'd get from Egypt. So rather than getting an object or a souvenir or a trinket from 1400 BC, they were actually getting something that was made in their time in the late 1800s. And yes, I have a lot of things from thousands of years BC, not just ancient Egyptian, things from Luristan and Greece and Rome and various other places around the world. Still having objects from the 1890s, yeah, it's still pretty old, right? There's that old myth from a very long time ago that says since there were no trees out in the desert and there were so many mummies, that mummies were used to fuel the trains. You know, the old steam locomotives? Did that actually happen? Well, maybe not. Is that true that it is a common practice? Well, no, it's not true. That was just one of the stories that came from ancient Egypt. Well, not really ancient Egypt. Egypt a long time ago? Anyways, back when I was doing the rounds on the artifact websites, there would be some amazing items up for auction. Now, these things didn't come directly from Egypt. They have been out of Egypt for hundreds plus years. Hundreds of years. It's been said that the British were able to remove things from Egypt as soon as they were dug up. Well, that's an exaggeration. But most of the items that came out of Egypt in the late 1800s and early 1900s, there is a paper trail and a chain of custody for them. Such as a particular item that was removed from Egypt in 1912. It was displayed at this museum in London. Then it was purchased by a private collector, and then this private collector had it. And then after some time it ended up in the New World, and it was in New York City or Los Angeles or San Francisco, and then it, got into my grubby little hands. The point is, it can be traced all the way from Egypt to where it currently is by who owned it and what collection it was in every time it was transferred. And that gives you the history of the piece, helps you to identify the piece, and also authenticate the piece. Not just normal items were removed from Egypt during these times. There were full mummies. And we see this today in museums. If you have a full mummy in a museum, you could say it's for art and culture. It's still a dead body wrapped in cloth. Now, if Bob down the street has one in his basement, well, that's called serial killer. So these auctions would have mummies or pieces or parts of mummies also. You get a mummified fish for $250 because they mummified food to go in there with the fancy person when he croaked. You know, in case he needed something to eat in the afterlife. That's weird, right? I was in a little bidding war for a mummified hand, and I think I stopped around $1,250, $1,300. It sold for about $1,500. I could have met that $1,500 or beat it, but really, did I want a mummy's hand that bad that I was going to spend that kind of money for? Because, you know, $1,200, yeah, well, it makes sense. But $1,500, you know, for a dead person's hand wrapped in mummy cloth? No, it's weird, right? And speaking of weird, one of the weirdest things I did see at auction, they had an entire mummy's head. That's right, it was a head of a mummy. I want to say that went for between $20,000 and $25,000. So if you wanted the head of some dead dude who died 2,000 or 3,000 years ago, you could buy it at an auction. To me, that's like creep factor 5, Captain. Yeah, and the dead mummy's hand isn't? Well, yeah, that was a head. Ugh. I guess my main point is, there wasn't just a trade for mummies, but you get cloth off of mummies. You know, the bandages, like from the mummy that was chasing Abbott and Costello. You know, in that movie? Or The Mummy, rawr! When it comes to mummy cloth, there's a couple way values are set. Is it from a famous mummy or dead croaked person? Did it come from a famous location? Is it a large piece or a small piece? And last but not least, what part of the mummy did the cloth come from? The piece you're looking at today came from the face of the mummy. This was right over that dead dude mummy's face. Was it touching his skin? Well, no, probably not, because there's layers and layers of this mummy cloth. I mean, heck, hadn't you seen the movie The Mummy? This isn't a very big piece. Like I said, this was in a lot of various Egyptian items, and it is mounted on this piece of cardboard, and probably has been for, I don't know, the last century, because it came from a mummy's face, or head of a mummy. Now, if it was just from the mummy's torso, or his foot, or elbow, or something, no one's going to care. They used to throw that stuff in for free when you bought a larger lot of Egyptian artifacts. But something like this had more value because it came from the mummy's face. Don't ask me why. But at least I can say, hey, I got a chunk of cloth that came off a mummy's face, opposed to saying, hey, I got a chunk of cloth and I think it came from his left foot or his right buttocks. So yeah, really weird, right? So I guess this is the point where I can do my disclaimer. I do not currently, nor have I ever had, real pieces of mummy in my possession. Pretty sure it's not illegal, right? Not me. But I got cloth that was on a mummy's face. Yeah, weird. It's even weird when you touch it. So, leave your comments in the comment section. Do you collect weird things? Do you know someone who collects weird things? And no, I don't mean Bob down the street who's got that mummy in his basement. As always, thanks for watching.
Beanmeister 22, the most dangerous man on YouTube.